What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. Now today I wanted to bring to you a video bringing to you my top 5 discussion-worthy cards for the 2017 ban list. Now around this time, whether it's the middle to the end of December to early to mid-January, we typically get a ban list around this time. So I figured I wanted to get this out now and kind of start a discussion with all of you for what cards you guys also think should be on or, coming off this coming ban list. So be sure to leave down in the comments below what your thoughts are, but I'm going to go ahead and give my 2 cents. Just before I get into that though, I just want to give as a little preface that my predictions are both a hybrid of what I want to happen and also what I feel like should happen. It isn't one or the other, it's kind of a mix of the two. Based on the format that we're currently in, it's a really interesting area because the current format, the best decks are ABC, Metal Foes, and Paleozoics, and then we also have like Toad Hero and Mermail and a bunch of other cards, decks rather I should say, kind of like in the mix, hanging on like the edge that are still doing well competitively. But the issue is, once Raging Tempest comes out and we get the Zodiac Beasts, the Zodiac Beasts are basically going to take over everything, so it's really weird to think about cards that, if we hit them now with the current decks, when Zodiacs come out, they're just going to further dominate the format even more, but then you also have to think about what could we potentially hit with the Zodiacs that could maybe put them more into balance. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my number 5 pick, these are in no particular ranking order, so for my first pick, I guess I should say, is Elder Entity Norden. Now, Norden has been around for quite some time and basically brought Instant Fusion into the competitive spotlight. I mean, the ability to just turn Instant Fusion into a pay 1,000, play any rank 4 Xyz from your deck is pretty fucking nuts. So why I feel like Norden's gonna get hit is for a couple reasons. First off is Totally Hero and Mermail itself. The ability for that deck to be able to summon multiple Totally Awesomes, mostly in part to Instant Fusion. The deck is capable of summoning 2 Totally Awesomes on its own, but the fact that it can summon Instant Fusion pretty much enables that a lot easier than the deck would have to by using multiple resources to do so on its own. Instant Fusion just makes it way more easier by enabling Norden to summon back one of your level 4 waters, summon another Bahamut Shark, summon another Totally Awesome, and then your opponent's basically on lockdown. I don't mind that the decks can do that on their own without Instant Fusion. It's very possible to do so even with the added inclusion of something like Rare Fish, because then they still have the plays to do that. Instant Fusion can still be played in the deck. It's just going to require more resources for them to do so. But looking into the future as well, we have a deck like Zodiac Beast, which should also abuse Norden via Instant Fusion to an extreme level. I just think that it's time for Norden to go. The reason I feel like Norden should go over Instant Fusion is because, like I alluded to earlier, something like Rare Fish or Panzer Dragon for like level 5 decks that want to bring out Infinity, I love Instant Fusion as a tool like that to be able to enable those sorts of plays. But Norden, I feel like, generates way too much advantage and is too much of a serious threat to the game that I feel like that it's time to go. OCG, I believe, got rid of Norden out of their game around the same time at about now as it is in the TCG. So I think as much as we all know and love Norden, as much as we've loved to use him, as much as we've hated getting wrecked by him, I think it's Norden's time to go. So for the next card on the list, though, we have Anti-Spell Fragrance. Now, Anti-Spell is really interesting because you could kind of be on either side of the fence of the argument because, the thing about Anti-Spell is this, in my opinion. A lot of people hate Floodgates in general. So, cards like Vanity's Emptiness, you got cards like Skill Drain, things like that. Anti-Spell Fragrance is a very interesting card because not only is it a Floodgate, it's a Floodgate that for the most part shuts down 50% or more of pretty much every deck that's in the meta. And that's because the thing is with Vanity's Emptiness or Skill Drain or things like that, sure, it locks down special summoning, it locks down effects, whatever the case may be, but most of the time, decks can still have, there's a way to kind of play around a card like that, or there's a way to play through it. Sometimes there's not. We know Vanity's Emptiness, can basically single-handedly win games, but Anti-Spell Fragrance is a much different beast in my opinion. The fact that it basically, if you don't open a Twin Twister or an MST or some sort of hard removal in your opening hand when they flip the Spell Fragrance, you automatically lose. I don't feel like that's fun and interactive by any means possible. Like, Vanity's Emptiness, you know, if you destroy any other card on the field, then Vanity's Emptiness is going to get destroyed. And I know people make boards to kind of prevent that from happening with Cyber Dragon Infinity and whatever, but there's a lot easier ways to out cards like Vanities or Skill Drain or all these other floodgates than there is Anti-Spell Fragrance. And it gives the player using that card such an unfair advantage that I definitely feel like this card should go to 1. Now, the one thing I'm worried about with Anti-Spell going to 1, Metal Foes are probably considered the best deck at the moment, and so with Anti-Spell Fragrance going to 1, the Metal Foes now the best counter to them is pretty much now on the limited list, so now Metal Foes are going to have more free reign to do as they wish. But, again, with the Zodiac Beast coming out soon, you know, that might just kind of put everything back into check. So, Anti-Spell Fragrance, I think, should go to 1. So the third card on this list is Book of Moon. Now, Book of Moon's a very interesting card because this used to be considered the best -1 in the game for a long time. And to my opinion, it still is a very strong card. I mean, the fact it's such a versatile and flexible card in the fact that you can change monsters from face up to face down, stops Exceeds plays, stops ignition effects. There's so many different things that a card like Book of Moon can stop, but the biggest downside to Book of Moon right now is that it targets. I mean, it's a quick play, it's a spell, it's got everything else going for it, but the fact that it targets can kind of be very crippling because it can't dodge things like quick effects. We got a lot of cards in the game now that are untargetable, a la Kirin, Magispectors in general, Cosmic Dark Destroyer, anything like that. I definitely feel like Book of Moon can come down the list to maybe 2 or even possibly 3 because it's such a powerful card in the things that it can stop. The fact that it targets things gives it kind of an inherent weakness now because cards are just made so powerful to dodge stuff like Book of Moon, but Book of Moon pretty much can do the job 9 times out of 10 in achieving what you want, but in a very fair way. So I definitely feel like Book of Moon should come down the list a little bit. It also kind of helps in the future as well because it can disrupt Zodiac plays very effectively. And speaking of disrupting Zodiac plays, my number 4 card on the list is Torrential Tribute. Now, Torrential Tribute is also a really interesting card because if you haven't been paying attention to the Zodiac Beast at all, one of the major weaknesses of the deck is board wipes. And a common trend in the current format right now is board wipes because Metal Foes hate getting board wiped, ABCs hate getting board wiped, pretty much every deck in the format hates getting board wiped. I mean, I guess that shouldn't really be a surprise, but there's been some formats, you know, let's say like go back to Cosmo format or something like that, or Burning Abyss format for that matter, where board wipes were fucking terrible. But now, board wipes are coming back into contention. And the fact that Torrential Tribute's still at 1 kind of is something that I feel like is a very viable candidate to come off the ban list. If we can bring a card that's currently at 1 back to 2 or 3 to just increase the odds of having a card that lets us play the game, because we already have 2 Dark Holes, we have Regeki, and then we also have 3 Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. Pair that with 3 more Torrential Tribute, and we have a lot of fucking board wipes, and that just allows players to continue playing the game and have a lot of advantages to, you know, just play more than 1 or 2 turns of Yu-Gi-Oh! And then rather than these games lasting, you know, 10 or 12 minutes, they're going to be lasting 20, 30, sometimes even 40 minutes, and it'll just allow more play and allow more players to just come back, break boards, and pretty much keep going and continuing with their play. So it stops Zodiac Beasts, it stops Metal Foes, it stops ABCs. It's a trap, so it inherently sucks for that reason because it has to be set for a turn. The chance that it's susceptible to some sort of removal is very high compared to something like Dark Hole or Regeki. So again, it's a fair and balanced card in my opinion. Sure, it's a board wipe, but at the same time, because it's a trap, someone can easily dispose of it before it has a chance to completely wipe the board. So I definitely feel like Torrential Tribute is a very viable candidate to come off the ban list. Now, last but not least, the last card I wanted to discuss is Max C. Now, a lot of you guys know that I really hated the fact that Max C got put to 2 on this last ban list. And it's not because I have a playset of Ulti Max Cs, it's because the fact that Max C is, in my opinion, one of the greatest deterrent hand traps that is currently in the game. You know, Elvis Vu said in his last deck profile that Max C is like the greatest card in the game, and I would agree to that to an extent because there's no card that does what Max C does. It's the biggest gamble card that there is because, sure, it can generate you so much advantage, but if the player playing it can create a board state where it doesn't matter, then, you know, sure, go ahead and go for it. But sometimes you don't have that choice. Sometimes you need to make the most optimal play possible, give your opponent more cards than you intended, because that's how you're going to win the game. But on the other side, it also completely deters your opponent from playing at all. You know, they might just special summon one monster, know you're going to special summon another, and then you might give them a 1-for-1, or you might stop your play altogether to make them minus, and then you might take that risk that their hand is not sufficient enough to be able to kind of counteract your board and continue from there. With the current format, you know, we've got ABCs, Paleozoics, Metal Foes, Totally Awesome Heroes. We got all these decks that are very special summon reliant in some sense or another. And again, I really love the kind of mind games that Max C plays because it makes for some very important decision making that kind of separates higher tier players from lower tier players. It's a very skillful card in a lot of instances because while some people might argue, well, you can just drop it at any time, sometimes when you use Max C makes all the difference rather than just dropping it immediately. If you can corner your opponent in a situation where sometimes they have to forcibly give you additional cards, that can make all the difference and almost win you a game than if you just drop it immediately and they aren't cornered into a situation that they feel like they need to overextend. And so I really feel like Max C should come back to 3, especially looking into the future with Zodiac Beast. That card is basically one of the biggest deterrents for that deck, since that deck can special summon any number of monsters in a turn, and that one is just a very, very viable deterrent for the deck, which again, like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm trying to bring that deck down into balance with some of the other decks by making sure we have enough outs to deal with it, rather than hitting the deck directly itself, because I don't think Konami's going to do that. I think Terratop's going to stay at 3, I think Tenki's going to stay at 3, I think Invoker's going to stay off the list. I don't think they're going to touch these cards. They might do an adjusted list like what they did with Full Power Pepe, but I don't think for this next upcoming ban list, they're going to touch any of the core Junichi cards. So that's it for my top 5 cards that I wanted to discuss with you guys for the ban list. Let me know again down in the comments what you guys think should be or should not be on the ban list coming up. I really love to hear the discussion and just get some good conversation going. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content, and back me on Patreon, because just by pledging $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to bring you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thank you guys so much again. We'll see you next time.